Hi there, welcome to Visible Man. Today we are here with Mark Winston from Men's Shed. Men's Shed answers men's innate need for activity. It's a club mainly for older guys. They have tools and materials for pursuing our interests and passions, for learning something new and sharing skills. They join to make stuff and tinker. They share a pot of coffee and a friendly atmosphere. And in the end, they make friends and discuss troubling health issues. It's best summarized as men don't talk face to face, we talk shoulder to shoulder. So I'm here with Mark Winston, who's a director of the U.S. Men's Shed Association. He's worked with Men's Shed, the Men's Shed movement in the U.S. for over 5 years and helped start the second Men's Shed in Canada in 2014. Mark has been an entrepreneur for half his life and was a consultant in starting new businesses and raising venture capital. Mark's motto is, helping others is the best thing you can do for ourselves because we're stronger together. Hey, Mark. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Jeffrey. How are you today?
I'm good. Good. When I think about what I think of Men's Shed, what I think it is, it sounds just like an awesome place, like a place I'd like to hang out. Did I capture it pretty accurately with the stuff I grabbed from the website, or how would you describe it?
Yes, you did. Men's sheds can come in all shapes and sizes. It's the guys who decide how it's going to be, what activities they're going to work on. It's a grassroots kind of an ad hoc situation. Okay. It started in Australia in the mid-90s and grew from there. It is now in 14 countries around the world. There's approximately 3,500 men's sheds out there. There are women who start men's sheds. There are now she sheds in the world for women. Yes, it started basically for, let's say, retired folks. You know, when men retire, they start to lose their connections from work, their social connections. And a lot of guys will say, man, I can't wait to retire. But 2 or 3 months into it, it's like they wake up and they go, now what am I going to do today? That type of thing. So men's sheds were started to improve people's, I want to say, mental, outlook on life, and reduce suicide rates because of it. And now I would say, yes, it started with older seniors, but it can be for men and women of all ages these days. There's a lot of intergenerational work that's done in sheds, teaching younger people, hey, if you're supposed to be at work at 9 a.m., don't come floating in at 20 after 9, and it teaches them discipline. Some sheds, they build things for the communities. Some sheds do volunteer work for their communities. It just depends on the group of people that come together. We're here more or less for people to contact us. Our board is comprised mostly of people who have started sheds like myself. So we've been there, we've done it, and now we're consulting with people all over, on starting sheds. I actually talked with a man, Sylvester Gassana, who has started a shed in South Africa, believe it or not, and contacted us. So it's good. We've watched people change their lives in a positive way due to men's sheds, and that's what keeps us involved, Jeffrey.
That it sounds just like a great place to hang out. I talked to a guy a few months ago who studies men's health, and you're right. The suicide rate among men, especially in middle to older years, is just sky high. I'm still a working guy, and I think about retirement, and I think I can't wait. But the social connections they're kind of the glue that kind of keeps you going. So I can see this type of place being really comforting, a good place to be around.
The term, men don't speak face to face, they speak shoulder to shoulder. was originally quoted by Barry Goldie, who is also in Australia. He's written 2 books on men's sheds. I just want to put that out there. The first book was published in 2015, and we used it as our encyclopedia when we started the men's shed movement in the U.S. His second book was published in, I think, was October of last year, and it takes the movement from 2015 to the present time, and so forth. But you know, going forward with this, it's really nice to see it growing. There are now sheds in Iceland and Norway, believe it or not, which when we started in the U.S., they were not there. So it's good to see it spreading around the world, and so forth.
It really is, and that's a fairly short time frame. I mean, you've mentioned that Men's Shed started long ago, but just to have these books published in the last 7 years, it's a lot of good growth. You mentioned an encyclopedia. When I maybe answer this. This is kind of a general question. When I think philosophically about guys connecting shoulder to shoulder, is there a guide? Is it kind of a guidebook for how to run a men's shed, or is it kind of a philosophical capturing of how men work together? Or tell me more about if the beginning of a men's shed, what that looks like.
It's more or less a philosophical capture of how men work together, but it's got a lot of statistics in it as well. Basically focused on Australia and what they have done, what they did up to that point. It doesn't really tell you the building blocks of how to start a shed, because there's a million different variables there on how to start a shed. Okay. That's up to David Helmers, Barry Golding, myself, my board of directors, that sort of thing, to get people over the challenges. When somebody comes to us and they go, I'd like to start a shed, one of the first things I tell them is it would be good for you to find another person or two and form a steering committee, people that have the same values and similar visions as yourself. Because starting a shed, whether it's a sponsored shed, which means it would be a shed in a senior activity center, let's say, or an independent shed, one that is not connected to anything, basically. They're just guys coming together. That, depending on what your background in the work world was, are you comfortable with going and knocking on a door of people that you've never seen or talked to before and talking about men's sheds? Are you comfortable with, creating the entity itself? Are you comfortable with some sheds are 501c3s, and all of these challenges, sooner or later, people are going to run into, you know what I'm saying? So, if you've run Ford Motor Company, you're not going to have a problem. But if you haven't, perhaps there are questions that you're going to have, and that's why we're here. You know what I mean? I'm on calls and Zoom calls, probably half dozen times a week, with new people and people, just starting off, and even sheds that are maturing. There's a growth factor in that. You know what I mean? Well, what do we do now? That type of thing. During COVID in 20 and 2021, there were sheds that thought they wouldn't make it. You know what I mean? Because of where they were, and everybody's locked down, and so forth. We have a shed in Florida started by Steve Werner, who immediately went to Zoom calls, okay? And they ended up keeping their shed together. They have people from Europe on the Zoom calls. It's amazing what they have done. And each week they get together and they have a special topic they're going to talk about. Well, that kept everyone together, and more and more people have joined that over time. So we try to push that type of idea out there. Now, not everybody 60 plus or or older are comfortable, with technology and so forth. But we'll get you over the hump. We'll get you
Hmm.
there,
Hmm.
if you need that. So, yeah. Um, as you can see, there's almost no boundary around this thing, right? You know what I mean? It's like, boy, oh boy, what can we do? You know what I mean? Whatever you can come up with, that makes sense for your guys and your community. The shed that I helped start in BC 8 years ago is now, on certain days, the third busiest place in that town, other than the supermarkets. They are so into the community and doing good work for the community. It's amazing. We have a shed in Ruston, Louisiana, that does the same thing.
Hmm.
In Hawaii, there's a couple of sheds that do the same thing. It's amazing how the feelers go out and they integrate into the communities, and it's all good work, believe me.
That's so. If I were to walk into the shed that you started in DC, walk me through what that would look like. Are there guys sitting around having a cup of coffee? Are they getting together so that they can take a bus to do volunteering? Are they building a
There, okay.
crib?
What
Like,
it's funny. It's like right now there's probably about 80 or 90 members of that shed. Even if you have 100 members of a shed, there's usually 25, 30 people that are there all the time. Okay. And the rest come for lunches or this and that. But the shed that I was with, and helped start, is now it's a shed that builds boat docks for people on lakes. They started by doing flower boxes for women in the town. They had no idea where they were going with all of this. They've built wheelchair ramps for buildings in that town, and it's amazing, all the things that they're doing. Yes, you could go in for a cup of coffee. You don't have to do anything. There's no criteria to that. You can go in and sit around and just talk to people, all day long. I'll tell you one story, and this is the story that keeps me at it, okay? 2 months into that shed, I knew of a fellow who was clinically depressed, who never left his house, never left his house. He started coming to the shed. About 2 months into the shed, he walks up to me one day. I thought he was going to shake my hand and we were going to talk about the weather, okay? He came up to me, he hugs me, and he goes, "Thank you for giving me my life back." I almost fell on the floor, Jeffrey.
that's
I almost fell
amazing.
on the floor. That is a story that is so ingrained in my brain. You know what I mean? That I've seen the difference. That fellow, to this day, is opening that shed at least 4 days a week, for people. And he would never come out of his house before that. And that is a true story. And that's the story whenever I need motivation,
Mm-hmm.
I go to, you know what I mean, in my own head. I've got a lot of other stories similar to that. I visited a shed in Minnesota in 2018. I was going out and visiting some sheds. This shed was actually, it was the day they were going to go to the park that they adopted. Okay. So I go into the shed. It's like, well, today we're going to the park. Okay, fellas, I'm going to the park with you. So we drove over to this park. This was in Hopkins, Minnesota. And, we got out there in this park, and it's like, it's a beautiful park. There might be a stick here, a leaf there. There were like 16 guys. We walked around the park for a couple of hours. I got a chance to talk with each man. And let me tell you something. They could have either been there, or they could have been selling ice cream or rotating tires on people's cars. The magic of that afternoon is they were all together because of that shed. And if they weren't there, they would have been at home taking naps. Who knows what? You know what I mean? Watching television. Basically, waiting for the day to end. But you could feel the positive energy in that, just in walking around. That day it was palpable, Jeffrey.
That sounds. The guys that, well, when I've connected with a guy, and there's a couple guys in my life right now that they're not doing great, and it, like you said, it's not face to face. I can, some of the guys I can see myself sitting down with, a cup of coffee, face to face, going, "Are you okay?" Most of the time it goes better when I do what you just described. When I'm, "Hey, can you help me?" Like you said, rotating tires or building flower beds. And then something, comes out like, "How's your breakup going? Like, how are you holding up?" And it's just like a sentence or two, because guys, a lot of times when I introduce Visible Man, I say men suck at sharing feelings because it's very hard for us to open up. So this sounds like it's a really nice icebreaker. It's like a very strong community.
Sheds are safe places for guys. Okay. Guys, have more health problems than women. Guys live about 5 years less than women, longitudinally, if you take a study like that. They will bottle things up inside. They don't want to appear fragile to either their friends or their family. This especially is true if they're feeling a little depressed or anxious. Okay. They start going to a shed. The shed, they make friends in the shed. Many sheds have speakers that come in. They talk about health issues, finance issues, legal issues for seniors, and so forth. Even after those speakers leave, days and weeks later, that creates conversations between the guys. Defenses go down. They feel more comfortable. The next thing, they're helping each other. It's like, well, I've got to go to the doctor and check my prostate or something of that nature. All right, Phil, I'll go with you. You know what I mean? And they have camaraderie. Camaraderie builds out of it. The safeness that they can then start to talk about. My wife passed away 2 years ago. I haven't gotten over that. They don't talk to people like this, out in the real world. But the shed will bring that out in them, and in the end of the day, they are actually helping each other stay healthier, whether it's mentally or physically or both, through that process.
Yeah, I could see that. What is it? I know in the introduction I said it's mainly for older guys, but what's a typical makeup of a men's shed?
Probably, I want to say 70-75% are retired guys. Okay. Ruston, Louisiana, for instance, has people in their 30s, their 40s. Half of their membership are women down there. It's amazing. And they have, I don't quote me on this, but like every other week, they have a day that just the women go to the shed, and they'll make things, or they'll do this, or they'll do that. Otherwise they integrate, but between the two, during the week and so forth. But in Australia right now, they have 1,257 sheds who are members, and 120 she sheds down there. And the she shed thing has come subsequent to the men's sheds. And I think it helps women in the same way, that type of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems that women are much better at finding, or at least relating and having social connections than guys are. But it also seems that women are an integral part of men's mental health, because they can be a good channel for us to open up to. We go home to them, many of us. It seems like having women involved in a men's shed can only help everybody else, I think.
a lot of women are motivators for men to get out of the house and go do something. It's like, okay, you've retired, you sit around the house all day, go out and do something, and a men's shed provides that opportunity to do that, and one of our board members, he started the shed because his wife said, stop playing golf every day and go do something else,
Right,
so he
right.
did.
Yeah.
Now he's on our board. So it's kind of neat how that worked.
Yeah. So what got you into it?
It's funny. I was living between British Columbia and Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I was doing a lot of work in both countries. I was on a board of directors in British Columbia called Community Futures. I was on that board in 2012, and they started talking about men's sheds. And it's like, okay, well, what's a men's shed? You know what I mean? So we did some research. We found out as much as we could. Then we forgot about it for a while. Then in 2014, I was traveling back and forth, and they said, Mark, will you help us? We can get this, we can try to put a men's shed together. At that time, also, I was running an historical society, and we had access to buildings on the grounds. So we had a cafe there. I got to tell you this story that was famous for making homemade pies and coffee and so forth. So we had the original meeting at the cafe, free pie and coffee. We had about 40 guys show up. Okay. And the next thing, you got to have that pie out there for that.
Dude, free food.
Show up.
It helps. Every single time, man.
So they decided, all right, let's do this. So I gave them space in 2 of the buildings that were on the grounds there, and they started. Since then, they've outgrown that. I knew the owner of another building in town. The building is 9,200 square feet. They've taken over the whole thing, Jeffrey.
Oh my God.
The whole bloody thing. And they've got a big parking lot outside that could handle 100 cars if they wanted. So it's perfect. They have since purchased that building through grants and so forth. And like I say, on certain days, it's the 3rd busiest place in that town. It's amazing.
So a 9,000 square foot men's shed, with full of stuff and guys doing things.
Yes. And what they've done is, part of what they've done is they'll take in older furniture and fix it up and so forth, and then resell it at a much lower price than you could get. And they started with appliances, fixing those and so forth. They just had a lot of very talented mechanical people that could do that. You know what I mean? And they have literally been floating that boat now for 8 years, and now they're at the point where they're doing boat docks for people. About 3 years ago, they started doing that. There's a lot of lakes around and a lot of water around them. So it's amazing. It's amazing what they have done. And when I look at that, and I look at some of the sheds, in the U.S., it's amazing what they're doing, because they're following suit on that. You know what I mean? And it's wonderful. It's wonderful for the people involved in the shed. It's wonderful for the people in the communities that they serve. And getting back to what you said about women and what we talked about. If it is a sponsored shed, it would usually be in a senior activity center or someplace like that, right? Senior activity centers have 105 things for gals to do, 7 things for guys to do that they don't do at all. You know what I mean? They're not going to line dance. They're not going to go to the quilting niche. You know what I mean? But when somebody approaches a sponsored shed, and I know some sponsors and they have sheds in them, the sponsor looks at this as an add-on value to their center, because all of a sudden
Mm-hmm.
guys are coming there. Now, depending on insurance and this and that, what can they do and so forth? But a lot of sponsored sheds do a lot of volunteer work. You know what I mean? And build, like little mobile libraries for their towns and things like this. One shed works with the police youth league. You know what I mean? And then they go to the local soup kitchen, every other Thursday for 3 hours, and they volunteer there. Here again, it doesn't matter what they're doing, but they're doing it together.
Yeah.
And the camaraderie is there, and the friendship is there, and the positive energy is there. So,
Yeah.
yes.
And this is all volunteer driven, volunteer based, right?
Yes.
Is there a membership fee or anything for Men's Shed?
Yeah, but it depends on the shed. It can be as low as $20 a year. It can be $20 a month.
Mm-hmm.
That somebody has to be buying the coffee and the tea and the this and the that. And it depends on how the guys want it structured. There's no golden rule to this. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I know there is one shed out there that they actually have a paid fellow that is there maybe 30 hours a week that they know is going to be there, but it's no king's ransom by any means.
Mm-hmm.
But 99% of it is all volunteer work. Yes.
Okay. Makes sense. So just a couple questions. Do you have to bring anything? Like, it's all
yourself.
You don't have to bring tools or supplies or nothing like that.
If it's a shed that builds things, we have a second shed in Hawaii right now that is going to build a lot of stuff and so forth. They send out notices to the community. There's a lot of people that have a garage full of tools that they haven't used for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it's like, wow, I can give these to people who will actually utilize them, and they feel good about it. And the shed is like very grateful that they're receiving it, that type of thing. So it just depends. Here again, there's no, parameters around it. It's like, what are the needs? Let's fulfill the needs of the guys in the shed itself. So, and here again, when they ask the community around them for things, they're slowly integrating into that community. And then the community finds out, well, what's this Men's Shed thing? Let's go check that out, that type of thing. So it's symbiotic in its core. I think.
And you mentioned there's two different kinds. There's a sponsored kind where it might be at like a retirement facility or another location, and then there's an independent kind. Is there any difference in how they're set up? Or is it kind of the same thing?
Yes,
just in different locations?
There's quite a big difference. I was involved in an independent shed, and luckily in the beginning, I had control over the buildings, so they could just go in there and do what they wanted. But most independent sheds, people have to look at the building. It's owned by somebody. A lot of times, counties and municipalities have a lot of underutilized buildings. Okay. The first shed in Hawaii was one by the water that the state owned, and nobody was using it. So they went in there, and the state said, hey, it's 6,000 square feet, by the way. And they said, hey, if you come in and you make sure everything is working and, if something breaks, this and that, and just pay the utilities. Well, that worked out beautifully. That was the first shed in the U.S. That was started by a fellow named Glenn Sears. And I think they have 130 members or something like that. It's incredible what's going on there.
Wow.
I'm going to have to go to Hawaii and visit that shed.
This sounds pretty awesome. I got to admit, just like a shed in Hawaii by the water where you can build stuff. I mean, come on. That's just like, who wouldn't want to do that?
Yeah. I know. Now there's two sheds out there, right? You know what I mean? It's just it's growing. You know, it's going along, and it's pretty amazing,
That's
really,
awesome.
how it does. You know, in Minnesota, a fellow named Phil Johnson started the first shed in Minnesota, which was the second shed in the U.S. And now there are 10 sheds in Minnesota. So you can see how it, you know, it kind of, you know, spreads out and so forth. A good idea, people want to follow a good idea, you know.
Yeah.
So we're looking, we are looking for that kind of growth all across the U.S. COVID, you know, threw a wet blanket on it for a couple of years,
Mm.
but that's, you know, that's abating. So we're going to go forward now, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mentioned this before, but it's men's suicide, especially in this demographic, is kind of a silent killer, um, because it's not something that we talk about. You don't see ads for it. There's a lot of important political things going on, but men's suicide, the numbers are incredibly high. And things like this are sort of like this substrate of strength that you can give to guys, that just shoulder to shoulder of just, like you said, the story that you mentioned, it kind of gave me chills, because that guy literally could be here today because of what you've done. And that's not going to make the news necessarily, but the fact that he found that strength, it's just awesome. It's just really cool.
It is. And you know, other countries that are far ahead of the U.S., and I'm going to say Ireland, Scotland, England, Wales, they're working with this. In England, back in 2017, they appointed a minister of loneliness, okay, because of just what you said. Guys not doing anything, guys committing suicide, guys drinking all day long, you know, all of those things, it came into it. Those countries, you know, or Ireland, for instance, in 2012, well, maybe it was 2010 they started, but by 2012, you know, the Irish were kind of in a recession, you know, that type of thing. And sheds really kept those people together.
Hmm.
Right now in Ireland, there are like 450 sheds. Ireland is commensurately about the size of Minnesota, about the same population, 5 million people. 450 sheds. It's unbelievable. If you go to Ireland or you go to Australia or Scotland or one of those countries that have been doing it for a long time and talk about sheds, they'll tell you where to go to the nearest shed. If you talk about men's sheds in the U.S., you get the deer in the headlights look. You know what I mean? It's a steep hill we're climbing, but it's for the very same reason that we are climbing it. Okay. The point is we need more outreach going on, you know, and we've been working on this for, you know, 5 years now, but it's hard. It's pushing a rock up a hill, but we're doing it. But it has its challenges.
Why do you think it's hard, particularly here in the U.S., compared to the other countries you mentioned?
I think the U.S. moves normally probably 5 times faster than these other countries, you know, on any given day. Um, the governments in these other countries have recognized the fact that healthcare costs are being lowered by sheds. Suicide rates are lowering because of sheds. The U.S. doesn't get that yet. Okay. You know, I hear my opposite numbers in like Ireland or England or Australia. They tell me when, you know, people from the U.S. are over there looking at their sheds thinking, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. They come back to this country and nothing happens. Well, yeah, I'll tell you a story. You know, Vivek Murthy was in England, okay, and went to several sheds. My opposite number over there, Mike Jen, told me, man, he loves this. He was the Surgeon General under Obama. He is now the Surgeon General again. I've tried for a year and a half to get him on the phone. I can't do it. So you know, and I'm not going to go into the politicalness of everything, but, you know, it's like, come on, guys. You know, I mean, here, here we really need this, just as much as any other country. We have a population much greater than all these other countries and so forth. But, it's like we're still working at it and we're still growing sheds. So, it's an all volunteer basis. Everything we've done, we paid for ourselves out of our own pockets to keep this movement going. And we would love to get some recognition out there, to get some help. You know what I'm saying? We could do so much more. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this can help get the word out. I'm really hoping that. We've had a couple questions. I'd like to switch over to those.
You bet.
How do younger guys get involved? Is there a space for younger guys?
Yes, they just come in. One of the things with younger guys is they usually have jobs that they have to be at. You know what I mean? A lot of times. So it's like, if you work 9 to 5, it's like, can I come to the shed on the weekends? But just show up. In Hawaii, the first shed had guys in their 20s in there. Guys in their 20s, guys in their 80s. But they all enjoyed themselves. So just, come to a shed and you will be welcomed. It is inclusive of everyone. If that helps answer that question, Jeff.
It does. It absolutely does. It makes me think of how men socialize by having, we kind of shape each other by being around each other. Just having the younger guys around the older guys. You're like, this isn't appropriate. You just do this. You don't do that. It sounds very similar to that.
Yeah, it's coaching. We're all here to learn something or teach something. In the shed, learning and teaching is part of the everyday operation.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. My grandfather died by suicide. I was not even aware of men's sheds until recently. Do you have any suggestions on how we can get our loved ones to at least check out a men's shed?
Talk to them. Start talking about men's sheds. Direct them to our website. Direct them to contact us. We're happy. I'm talking to people every week, every day of every week, about sheds and so forth. We are totally committed to this movement. We are mission centric, you could say. All right. And I know that it has changed lives. I've seen it change lives. It's not, well, maybe it does, or, we'll see what happens. No. It does change lives. I've seen it. I've visited different sheds. I've felt the energy come out of that, which is good for everyone. I was just on a conference with the Men's Health Caucus in Washington, in Washington, D.C. last Thursday. There are a lot of studies being done internationally on suicide and, what affects men and so forth. We are dying for data that we can have ourselves in the U.S. Johns Hopkins, that's just an example. I know the fellow who's the chair of the American Suicidology Association, Tony Wood. He and I have talked many times. They're dying for information like this, literally. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's like, we need to help get the word out there. So talk to people in your family, have them go to the website. We will help them get started, on sheds. And that's what I can say.
Okay. Yeah, actually, it's funny you say that, because the next question was, how do we spread the word about the organization?
When we started this basically up and running in 2017. Okay. In November of 2016, John Evoy, who was the president of the International Men's Shed Organization at the time, got myself, Phil, and Glenn on the phone together, okay, and said, you've got to bring the movement to the U.S., all right? So it's like, and I told him, John, I don't have time.
Mhm.
Then I went back to Wyoming, and I was finishing a project there, and it was December, and it was snowing sideways. No meetings, nobody was going anywhere. So I thought about this fellow in British Columbia, and I said, okay. So I contacted the Secretary of State's office in Wyoming, and we started the U.S. Bench Shed Association. Okay. Then about 10 days later, another blizzard. Nobody's doing anything. I applied for the 501c3 for us, and I asked Phil and Glenn, "Do you serve on the board?" They said yes. So we were off. In 2017, I'm getting to answer your question,
Yeah,
but it's a
you're
kind
good.
of a journey. In 2017, um, it kind of felt like it was our hobby a little bit. We were trying to figure out how to do this, what we were going to do. I started talking to David Helmers, so I didn't have to reinvent the wheel again, that type of thing. In 2018, a couple of things happened. The Washington Post did an article on men's sheds in Australia and the fledgling movement in the U.S. Okay. Boom. A gazillion people contacted us. They all wanted to join a shed, not start a shed, but they contacted us nonetheless. Then a couple of months later, one of the producers of the Today Show contacted me and because of that article, wanted to do a show or an episode on a shed. So they decided on the Grand Traverse, Michigan shed, run by a fellow named Jim Novak. And they did that. A couple of months later, it aired. Boom! A gazillion people contact us again. The hobby at that point turned into a job. Okay, now it's a real job that we've got. Okay, because of COVID in 2020 and 2021, we had. Now what are we going to do? It seemed like in the beginning of 2020, it's like, what now? So we looked into ourselves. We redid our website. We looked at our governance articles, constitution, bylaws, re-examined those, made some changes, started some sheds, helped sheds that didn't think they were going to make it. Okay, so the hobby that turned into a job became a serious job at this point, and now we've come out of it, and we've got a lot of momentum. People are contacting us every week,
That's
these
awesome.
days.
That's exciting.
And I just want it to keep going, the momentum. The more people that know about it, the more help we can get in starting it, and I have to tell you, out of the sheds we have 4 women who have started sheds. Okay. And there's one gal in Vermont. She's gotten a small grant. She wants to start 6 men's sheds up there. She's got her hands full. Okay. Yeah. Starting one shed, you have your hands full until it's up and going and operating. You have the help to manage it. Okay. So it's phenomenal. Some of these stories that, I can really elaborate on a lot,
Yeah.
it's like, wow, it's fantastic.
It's
What's going on.
it's I'm hoping that we can keep the momentum going with you guys. I hope that we can be a reason that people look into it more. I guess that's my final question. If I wanted to start a men's shed, or if somebody listening to this wants to, how would they go about that?
They want to contact me, Mark at usmensheds.org, or, call me on the phone, 307-920-8710. Okay. I will take the call. If I don't answer the phone, I will call you back. You know what I mean? If you email me and I don't answer the email in 19 seconds, that doesn't mean I'm not going to call you back or
Yeah.
email you back.
Mm.
It just means I'm busy, but we're working a lot with the Men's Health Network in Washington, D.C., run by Jimmy Boyd. He has been a blessing to us. We just had that one conference with the Men's Health Caucus. There's other places we're at, and we're talking, and they're talking to us. Um, they want to start a men's health department under HHS, and we're pushing to have that done. Congressman Payne has a bill that he wants to present to Congress. Jimmy Boyd has been in front of Congress talking about men's health. He's been to the White House several different times over several administrations talking about men's health. It's a fantastic relationship that we have with them at this point. So as time goes forward, our little tentacles are getting out there to a degree, that type of thing, but
Yeah.
still a long way to go. And this podcast, is going to help a great deal, Jeffrey. I really have to say thank you for this.
Absolutely.
And thank you to April Foreman, who put us together.
Yes, I met April and Tony a couple of weeks ago. We had breakfast.
No kidding.
We did. Yeah, through they introduced me to you. We talked on the phone, and I got to meet April and Tony in person. Just wonderful people doing great things.
Fantastic. That is fantastic. See, it's
the tentacles are just spreading around, man.
Yeah.
That's good. But we're after the same thing. We want guys to feel connected and seen and important and valued and save lives. And that's what Men's Shed is about.
Absolutely. I'm with you 100%.
Great. Well, I appreciate you being here with us today, Mark. Is there anything that I missed that you want people to know about Men's Shed?
There's a whole lot of stuff that we could talk about. Maybe we'll have to do this again in 6 months or something like that. But, it's a place for everyone. It's a safe harbor in the storm. I think it's a bright light in a dark world at the moment out there. You know what I mean? It helps people. It rebuilds emotional and mental well-being. You know what I mean? People feel better about themselves and their communities. I think it's an amazing phenomenon that started. And it started in Australia. Now here it is. So, yes.
I'm excited to find out more and look more into it with you. So thanks for being here today with us.
I'm always available, Jeffrey. Thank you so much for today. Really.
Absolutely. And all the information that you mentioned, your email, the website, we'll put it into the show notes so that people can find it after the fact. They could just click on it and they'll be in touch with you guys if they want to be. So we'll make it very accessible.
Thank you.
So thanks again, Mark. Thanks for joining us here, Invisible Man. You can find this and all of our previous discussions on YouTube and all the other major podcast platforms. Be sure to join us on our Discord server, where we have daily discussions on men's mental health, and where you can interact live with our guests like Mark here today, and where we invite you to help men become seen.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. It's very appreciated.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark.